You can think of the government essentially as a corporation in the limit. The government is simply the biggest corporation with a monopoly on violence.
Elon Musk's cooperation and/or technical relationships with other countries worthy of being looked at.
Treasury Department officials are looking into whether they have the legal authority to investigate Musk's Twitter deal.
Elon Musk, known worldwide as the richest man in the world, is about to be annihilated by extreme leftist politicians, along with America's stream media. And if this happens, the world will be in a catastrophic position that will destroy millions and millions of lives, and there will be no turning back. Elon Musk, because of his great contribution to the world of considerably advanced and literally extraterrestrial technology, is called the genius of the century. With his inventions in the development of new technological generations, creator and biggest shareholder of Tesla Inc. and SpaceX, which is currently associated with NASA, has gained a great amount of recognition, which has maintained its name among the first places of the most influential people in the world. However, these same reasons would be the cause that, currently, Elon Musk is in the crosshairs of being silenced and censored for his freedom of speech. You heard it correctly. The richest man on the globe just invested $44 million last October of 2022 in the acquisition of Twitter, with the only goal to save your right to free speech. This has also earned him the name of the Robin Hood of our generation for taking care of the most vulnerable from the suppression of freedom of speech. Can you imagine being canceled just for expressing what you think? Well, this is what is exactly happening in America as we speak. Let me explain in case you did not know. Throughout the existence of humanity, different ideologies have caused great stir and have marked the evolution of the planet, and these are nothing more than hierarchies that have been created since the beginning of the race, where the ones who have more power always try to silence those who think differently from them. In every evolutionary cycle, millions of people have been silenced. It has become clear that dictators will always find the way to silence those who oppose their ideas. And no wonder. Can you even imagine being suppressed just for having different ideas? It would be extremely fatal for you, and supremely devastating for the whole world. Can we ask a favor? Don't forget to like and leave your subscription to support us. These representations of unscrupulous power have been presented since memorable times that have marked history, such as the case of Jesus, his followers, and his 12 disciples, who were repudiated, tempted, silenced by the Pharisees, who were known as the teachers of the law, and the Sadducees, who belonged to a higher hierarchy. Since they possessed more money, they had risen to influential positions in ancient Rome and were categorized as aristocratic. Jesus saw himself under the clutches of wickedness that these men planted in him, and despite everything, he always kept his faith high until he was taken to the cross of Calvary, which represented a punishment and, above all, a curse for him and for all who followed his teachings. And do you know why all this happened? Although according to the scriptures it was meant to happen, without a shadow of a doubt, the beliefs that Jesus imparted went beyond what those Pharisees and Sadducees could control, and therefore, seeing him as a great political opponent, they decided to execute him. In the case of the Romans, in the middle of the medieval era, they were in charge of torturing their political opponents, who at that time were the Christians. Although in the politics of the Romans, at first they respected different beliefs. This was changing when they noticed that they did not possess a strong enough power of dominion over those who had different ideologies and beliefs. This, without a doubt, marked an era full of disputes where Christians were tortured in unimaginable ways just for believing in something different. Thus, the situation was repeated at the time when the Spaniards, in search of the conquest of the Americas, killed all those who opposed their regime. After years and years of constant struggle where only one side would be victorious. And it is not for less that many generations would have risen with these erroneous thoughts about what power causes in the world. And it is nothing more than the simple belief that the one who possesses more power is above all others. We could see this in Hitler's mandate, where the genocide approved by the regime of Nazi Germany took place against Jews, Poles, communists, homosexuals, mentally and physically disabled, prisoners of war, and even gypsies, giving rise to the well-known Holocaust, an event that would undoubtedly mark the world with figures of approximately 11 million people who died because they were different. And although this was an event that occurred in 1941, it currently makes us wonder if we could die under a strict regime just because we were different. And it is not for less that these doubts arise, if only by observing the regime of Stalin, where for 30 years he ruled instilling terror, repressing opponents and the minority, and creating a cult of his own image. Or in the case of the Chinese regime, which was in charge of massacring all those who went against its dictatorial laws. This, being something extremely fatal to the history of humanity, has been absolutely essential to identify how the world moves from hierarchies rooted in erroneous ideologies. Would you believe if I told you that currently these impositions on opposing thoughts and beliefs are still evident? And it is nothing more than a way to silence opponents, as in the case of Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez, both believers in the political ideology of socialism, where they subjected their countries, both Cuba and Venezuela, to absolutely fatal dictatorships that today continue to leave noticeable repercussions on their inhabitants. In addition to that, they taught their campaigns from the idea of democracy, but in reality their governments were only full of misery and hypocrisy, where they were more than responsible for silencing the opposition and blaming them for unjust crimes until they managed to sink them into jail, and of course, that their names were forgotten. As in the case that Mexico has lived and currently lives, with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, better known as AMLO, who despite his enormous acceptance of an incredible 70%, only a few years ago was repudiated in his own country for the perverse image that was published of him. And not only that, but Mexican television stations, such as Televisa, were always in charge of suppressing and manipulating any information that he wanted to give to the people, revealing the reality of the political system and how they elaborate situations at their convenience. Initially, social networks had become the escape window from political suppression and manipulation. This was how, without a doubt, the current president of Mexico, AMLO, came to the presidency. But this would also become a double-edged sword, because having so much disposition at its disposal, the corrupt politicians of Mexico, along with their systems convenient to their benefits, they decided to silence the freedom of expression of their political opponents with the famous cancellation of accounts. And you will wonder, where did all this begin? Undoubtedly, this began in the matrix of social networks, from where many say the world, the United States, is managed. And undoubtedly, at first they made us think that social networks, despite having rules, would allow us to expose our points of view without censorship, without fear. But this was a way of manipulating things under profile at their convenience. Can you imagine being censored? Or having your accounts deleted just because your ideologies are different from those of people with power? This is a reality, which many of us must face today. And this is where the richest man in the world comes in according to Forbes magazine 2022, and one of the most influential and somewhat controversial characters in action, Elon Musk, who, realizing that censorship that people are experiencing just for thinking differently or exposing the truths of others, decides to take action on the matter.
Well, I think it's very important for there to be an inclusive arena for free speech. Twitter has become kind of the de facto town square. It's really important that people have both the reality and the perception that they are able to speak freely within the bounds of the law.
Undoubtedly, when the creator of SpaceX and owner of Tesla, being a great business tycoon, decides to make it clear that in his plans is the purchase of the company Twitter, social networks revolutionized with a shocking boom, giving an iota of hope to all those voices that have been silenced and censored by people who own, undoubtedly, more power than many. It is important to highlight that in 2020, the presidential election of the United States of America was held, where, evidently, the party of the extreme left, being Joe Biden with a total of 51.38% general votes, the largest candidate to govern, was responsible for silencing the Republican Party, represented by Donald Trump, with a total of 46.91% of general votes. Because of this, many controversies began to be unleashed thanks to the new power that the party of the extreme left had acquired, as in the case of an interview published by Joe Rogan, where Mark Zuckerberg left in evidence that the FBI had given them to understand that the laptop beginning to the son of the current president Joe Biden had Russian disinformation and were responsible for suppressing any attempt or threat that this information would come out in the light, which would undoubtedly have caused a stir if this had happened, something extremely catastrophic for the Biden campaign. On the contrary, everything bad that was talked about President Trump, and that to date continues to be talked about, has never been censored. Social networks only cancel even political side and not the other. For example, the alleged Russian coalition that supposedly helped Trump win in 2016 resulted in a false accusation, like the other 6 serious accusations for which they tried to overthrow Trump. However, social networks never deny these accusations, and to date, they are all the articles related to these issues, which extremely influences the decisions of citizens for the votes, and undoubtedly the results would have been different. Through censorship and cancellation of accounts, the media were more than responsible for destroying the image and reputation of former President Donald Trump, and through their platform they only focused on nothing good about him coming to light. Although despite everything, the United States enjoyed the best economy and the most accessible and cheapest gasoline in decades, while the government was under his command. This situation reminds us of everything that AMLO's mandate had to suffer under the manipulation of information that the media of his country caused him. Undoubtedly, social networks function as a window in the digital world, where we can access our opinion and our ideologies without being afraid of reprisals. At this point, it is essential to highlight that many of these platforms are being managed by political entities and use them at their convenience, as in the case of Google, where their web searches are manipulated by the algorithm. Social networks such as Facebook, Instagram, and a lot of them will be responsible for suppressing information and positioning themselves as the proper judges of the world, showing that according to them, we do not have our own reasoning and that we do not know how to make our own decisions. To conclude, we must remember that the important point of Elon Musk has decided to acquire the Twitter platform is to restore many of the accounts that were censored, like those of former President Donald Trump, and allow users to constantly use this social network freedom of expression without fear of being expelled or censored from it. This leaves us as a teaching that the Robin Hood of our generation, better known as Elon Musk, the most millionaire man in the world, is in danger of the sights of the leftist party. And all this taking off since October of the current year, where this same party began to attack him as if he were a villain, publishing scandalous information on different platforms, something that makes us doubt how these networks are so manipulable. Since before this happened, and that the businessman Elon decided to get into these issues, he was seen on this same platform as someone wonderful, and these same social networks speak wonders of him. Will social media become a safe place to express what we want? Will these business tycoons do enough to achieve a fair democracy for all? These doubts are usually more common than you think, and it is nothing more than the evidence that many of us live in constant fear of being censored on these platforms. And maybe, for now, we will not have the answers until we wait for the evolution of events surrounding this situation. In conclusion, the current era and its new generations have been responsible for raising their voices against censorship, making it clear that they will never silence us anymore, and that we will raise our voices whenever necessary. And these great market magnets help us gain more territory. People like Elon Musk are worthy of admiration and personal improvement in addition to that. They keep their ideals firm and faithful in the face of any threatening situation. They do not let themselves be intimidated and take action on the matter. People like him deserve the necessary recognition. If you like the video, remember to leave your like, Subscribe and activate the notification bell to notify you when a new video comes out. And also comment that you think about the way in which networks can be a double-edged sword and how politicians use you, are in their favor in convenience and manipulating information,